one it'll be.
Got it. Oh, sorry, I'm talking to the computer.
Yep. All right, I am so excited to be here with Arne and Carlos. I've actually never met either one of them. I think we've been in the same place at the same time, but the way that our crazy industry works, it often doesn't afford us to get down and get to sit down and actually speak with the people that we would love to speak with. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today. As you know, this month we're featuring 2 of your colors of Norwegian wool. It's Daphne and Cappuccino. So I want to talk about those in just a second, but if you wouldn't mind, I'd love if you would fill people in on how the 2 of you came together and then got started in this crazy industry of ours.
Well, we met like over 20 years ago, and we came from 2 different industries or different lives, because I was working as a design teacher in Norway in a French fashion school with pattern construction and fashion design. And Carlos, you were studying in China.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in 2 different parts of the world. And then you came to Norway and we met. And at the time I had it being a teacher, I was fed up by trying to get people to be creative. And actually, before that, I also was offered a job. I was offered a job as a design teacher in Jakarta, and Carlos was offered a job in Beijing, in China. And then I decided I didn't want to be a teacher anymore, so I quit my job and I refused the offer, and you refused your offer because we had just met.
Carlos, what were you studying when you were in? Did you say Beijing?
Yeah, I was I was studying Chinese in China at the time, but I graduated from university with a degree in political science in Sweden. So, but anyway, but Arne told me that he didn't want to teach anymore. He was fed up with being a design teacher at the school of design where he was working. And then he said, and I said, what do you want to do? Oh, he said, well, I want to do something independently. And then I said, well, why don't you start a business? And then he said, well, I don't know how to do that. And then I said, well, let's see if I can help you. And then there was a 3rd person involved for a little while, but she left. And suddenly we started our own brand. And
then things started to happen when we started, because there was a lot of waiting in the beginning, trying to figure out how to do it and what to do.
What did that look like back then? What did your business look like back then? Did you start launching patterns? Did you start?
No, back then we were in the fashion industry.
Knitting was a hobby at the time.
We started a fashion brand, and originally the brand, it was women's wear. And we did these little capsule collections, very, very indie designers, showcasing them in Paris and New York in the little showrooms there during Fashion Week. And it didn't go very well for several years. We kept going and going and going, but it wasn't taking off as we wanted it to. And then in 2000, so we launched our brand in 2002. So we have a 20-year anniversary this year as Arne. And then in 2007, we decided that we wanted to change the design, the work we were doing, and we shifted from designing these little indie women's wear collections to doing knitwear. And the moment we shifted, we did this kind of Scandinavian or Norwegian design with a twist. It was the right time at the right place, because in 2007, suddenly we came to Paris and we went to New York with this new collection that was not a women's wear collection anymore. It was all knitted, and the stores just went crazy. And suddenly we were in, our designs were retailed in over 250 stores in the world, stores like Liberty in London and Barney's in New York and places like that. I mean, it was
not in Norway.
But not in Norway, no.
It's too Norwegian for Norwegian people.
That's funny. Who was producing your capsule?
We had manufacturing in Peru. So it was a high-end brand manufactured with predominantly a blend of merino and alpaca, baby alpaca. And it was manufactured in Peru, and then it was exported all over the world. And then we landed a collaboration with Comme des Garçons the same year, which is a very cult Japanese brand, fashion brand. And then from there, it went really well for several years until
Have you also did a collection with
Urban Outfitters.
Urban Outfitters for Canada and America, or you say?
And
Only
what,
knitwear?
when was that?
That was in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after a few years, we started to see the financial crisis coming, or it was already there, but it didn't affect us until 2010. By 2010, many of our customers were going bankrupt, and department stores like Liberty in London didn't have good credit.
And Takashimaya
Yeah.
in New York.
Oh,
Bust. Yeah, so we decided to put it on hold, put our brand on hold, and in the meantime, we wanted to work on this other project that we had, and we had pitched the idea of a book to our publisher, our now publisher in Norway. It's Cappelen Dam. It's quite a big publishing house, and they have titles in all different categories, so literature and crafts and yeah, maps and whatever. And we pitched the idea in 2009, and we signed a contract for a book in 2010. So when we quit, or we didn't quit, but when we put our fashion brand on hold in January of 2010, we knew that the book that we had, the Crystal Ball book, was going to be published in September of the same year. And then that book was published and it became an immediate bestseller. So we were going to go on a break, just a year, and see what to do with our lives, because we weren't sure that we wanted to go back to fashion. And then the book came and it went right into the bestseller list. And then the year after, it got published into 15 different languages, and we haven't been able to leave this industry since.
that's fantastic. I remember the year that it came out, and it must have been a TNNA. I remember walking by and seeing just the line of people waiting for you to sign. I'd forgotten that until you just mentioned that right now. That was there hadn't been a book that niche, which was so important at that time. The timing of it was impeccable. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. When was the pivot between, because creating a fashion line is very different from creating instructions for somebody to make their own non-fashion home decor, I guess. Where was that pivot? Was that a discussion? Was that something you've been doing on the side?
No, when we left the fashion industry, we didn't want to do anything clothing related. I mean, it was the financial crisis. We had some really bad years before, and then we had some amazing years, like 3 or 4 really good years. But by the time we decided to take a break, we were kind of exhausted. We didn't want to do any clothing. And then our idea as well, that when you do a book, like our Christmas book, you have Christmas every year. So the book can be relevant. I mean, it can stay relevant for the next 50, 100 years. But when you design clothing, it kind of goes out of date. So we were thinking at the time that doing a book, when we did a book, that we wanted it to be timeless. So the fashion was out of the question for the book anyway. And that, I think that's one of the reasons why we did so well, because we kind of could see, in which direction to take the book thing. So that it didn't become just like a fad.
No, and I mean, combined with the motifs that you use, the Norwegian motifs, it just makes so much sense you created something classic. That was brilliant. So now that I know that you were showcased in Liberty, the Rowan connection makes sense, but maybe I would love to hear a little bit about how you teamed up with Rowan to create the palette for Norwegian Wool.
When did that happen, Carlos?
Yeah, well, we've been
remember.
We've been working with Rowan since 2017. When we designed our first collection for Rowan in 2018. And just before the pandemic, we were offered by the Rowan team a yarn of our own in Rowan. It was originally going to be a Rowan Select, but it's been doing so well that they have decided to keep it in the core line. And so when they approached us about designing a yarn, the first thing we both said was that we'd love to do it, but it has to be Norwegian. It has to be, the raw material has to come from Norway. It doesn't make sense for us to design a British yarn. We have to do a Norwegian yarn. And we also were very particular when we worked with the colors about it having to be colors that are rooted in our Norwegian culture.
And also that the yarn could be like more typical for Norwegian knit.
Yeah.
So it's a yarn that is good for color work.
So when you were sitting down to create the palette, what was your jumping off point? Was it purely just there are these traditional colors within the sort of Norwegian zeitgeist, or did you approach it from some other inspirational angle?
We have a lot of different places we look for inspiration, like in the first collection, a lot of the colors came from old rose painted things that we have in the house.
They're like they are
like the box for your folk costume jewelry. They
There's-
have those with rose paintings.
There's special artifacts in the Norwegian folk art that inspire us. Also architectural features like doors in Norway. I mean, all the houses in Norway are in wood. So to start with, Norway has a very colorful, people think that Scandinavia is all about minimalism and everything is gray and neutral and pink and, you know, dusty pink and gray and white and black. But actually there's a lot of color here. It's one of the ways we get through winter. So in Norway, all the houses are made of wood because it insulates very well. And they're all painted in different colors, and it's been like this traditionally since for hundreds and hundreds of years. Then we have a rich tradition of folk art, a lot of painted furniture that is usually painted with flower patterns. So we started looking at that. That was kind of one of our starting points. And then Arne and I, we really like looking at things that have lived a long, beautiful life, but that are maybe, you know, that the colors are fading or the colors are changing somehow. And we had this wooden thing that was used for
I think it was used for milk or something. It's from the farm where I grew up, and that it's just pieces of like what you call that, like a bucket in wood. But the paint on it is so beautiful, and there are more colors even on that piece that we could actually put in the yarn. But we picked the light blue and the grays.
Yeah, the blue that you have behind you is actually inspired by that, because it was it was painted probably in a very, very dark blue, and then it's been fading and changing throughout I think this is probably 150-year-old.
Yeah, it's very old.
Yeah.
So
and then also after we had kind of like an idea of the color, I think we had 12 colors to begin with. And after we came up with the idea of the colors we wanted, and we looked at different artifacts for inspiration, we also started looking into what we like to call the golden age of the ski sweater in Norway, which is like the 50s and the 60s, to see what colors they used. And then our idea was, when we finally had the 12 colors, that we had to try matching them all with each other to see that that they would create what we would say are traditional but still contemporary Norwegian color palettes. So like a way to blend or mix colors in Norwegian knitwear would be using the grays, like a light gray, a darker gray, and then add a pop of color, which would be the red, right? Or you could do like the mustard and the cappuccino, the brown one. That's a really nice retro palette. Yeah, and then you have the very typical, which started in the 50s, the one where you use the flag, the Norwegian flag, so the red, white, and blue. Those had to be kind of right. And so everything kind of mixed and matched in a way that a Norwegian would say, yeah, this is a typical Norwegian ski sweater. And then this year's colors are now.
The colors on the last collection, we found that the sun is coming back here. It was raining the whole day. No, the colors in the second collection we found in a museum in Lofoten, the islands up north of Norway, and we went into this house where they have those fishing nets.
Yeah,
they were like old fishing nets that someone has actually made by their, like they sewn them
And
or
Lofoten,
wove them. I
Yeah.
don't know what they call it.
and Lofoten is a archipelago of islands north of the Arctic Circle in here in Norway. We have a connection to the islands because we are building a cabin there. But these islands are fishing. That's the best cod in the world is fished in Lofoten, and it's dried in the air, and then it's sold very expensively, mainly to Italy
For the
and
bacalao.
Portugal. They make the dry cod, the bacalao. What was interesting was to learn that because the fishing season is only a few months, it's in winter, and it was very harsh during the 17th, 18th, 19th century. It was a very dangerous job and quite harsh climate. But it was very interesting to learn that the fishermen, they would fish in the day, and then in the evening they would make the fishermen's nets or repair them, and they would put a lot of tender loving care into them, and they would dye them in different colors.
Well, there's so many beautiful fishing nets in that house. So
Yeah,
like
pink
the
and
pink one.
blues.
I love the synergy of a yarn meant for knitwear being inspired by another craft that involves a fiber knotting. But I love that.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, rich history. I truly believe that bleeds into every single ball and that it carries on the story. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here to share it with us.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I think so. Trisha can stop the.
Is Tisha there?
She's there. She's lurking.